Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, we have a new balance patch for the mid-season. Let's dive right in. First up, we have some removed cards as usual. We see that Groundbreaker is out. This card was really popular when it first came out. I remember making just huge Groundbreaker setups, and then as usual, you add like Leroy's and Venoms, and you just have your one big guy. But right now, I don't think I've played a single Groundbreaker game, so I just don't think there's enough support for it. Nagas are in this weird spot where you kind of just play some deep blue and everything else is not really worth going for. So yeah, we're gonna see what their plan is with Naga and where to take it. Tinkerer is out, which is a little bit of a surprise. It was just great. So I was had a lot of fun buying this minion on tier 3 and then just, oh, here's a shield, there's a shield. Sometimes hit something crazy like a shielded cleave. So not entirely sure what a minion is out. It could be too strong, but I mean, I doubt it. I don't know. But yeah, then a nerf is usually in order. But yeah, this was a fun minion, so don't really like to see it go. Quilt Cabby, who cares? Poor Cabby. I mean, it's okay sometimes. I remember buying it in combination with the Reborn Undead guy, and then you get like 2 gems and then another 2 attack and Reborn, and then, you know, your rightmost minion gets really strong. And then we have some Time Warp units going out as well, Jelly Belly and Silver. Those are very likely just being cut because nobody's buying them. And that is a big philosophy of the balance team is, okay, if stuff is a little bit too strong, you know, that's one thing, but just unfun things, boring stuff nobody buys, they do try to get rid of that or change it so that it's more fun, because, you know, that is the goal of the game. It's supposed to be fun. Then we have a second tier 5 pirate coming in, Thieving Rascal. So it is just a good economy unit, very good to get early on, and especially if you already have a few goldens on your board. Now, it's rare to have a few, but usually you triple into this, so you have at least 1 golden unit. And then when you're Reno, that is the nuts, because then you golden this guy, and then he procs on himself as well, because that's an additional golden unit. A very specific thing about tier 5 pirates is that in the current meta, or I guess right before the patch hits, you have the ability to force Shipment with the Time Warp Chef card, because Shipment is the only tier 5 pirate. So that's really cool. And you also have the Time Warp Summoner, I believe it's called. It's got the spellcraft that changes everything into the tiers. That also works really well with Shipment, because Shipment's the only tier 5 pirate. So this is going to change that, but it's still going to be decent because, you know, there's only 2 tier 5 pirates, which, you know, it still gives you a lot of chances to make a golden shipment with those mechanics. Metal Dispenser gets a huge buff. So it's still Divine Shield, it's still Avenge 3, but you even get an extra health on it. But now it magnetizes the Volumizer to itself in addition to giving it to your hand. Is that enough to suddenly make mechs good? I mean, it could be. It's definitely a good card early now. Like, if you get this with an Avenge setup, that's a lot of tempo you're getting. Like, it's essentially twice as much scaling, and you can still sell the magnetic in your hand for economy if you prefer that, if you don't have a plan of going mix. But yeah, this is a great buff, and it's honestly needed because nobody really wants to play this card. Mechs are also in a bit of a weird spot, so interesting to see, because it's a massive buff, right? You're making this card like twice as good. That's a huge buff. Then Shimmermoth is back. Instead of being an 8/3, it's going to be a 3/8. And that makes sense because the effect is going to change. It changes to whenever this takes damage, your Beetles have +2/+2 this game. Now, that can still be a problem because the Rylak build, I think, is unaffected by this, right? Because you have the Battle Cry, I believe it's the tier 3, that damages and then buffs your beasts, right? And you have that next to Rylak, and then you play Bran, you play Titus, you play Macaw. You know, those still got very, very, very big Beetles. So I think that build still just pops off. Now the buff is changed to 2/2 instead of 3/2, but still, we can still see that build being really strong. Now overall, this is a great change because this will no longer be insane with Lord of Ruins. You still damage it, but the buffs were far more, of course, because the AoE demon would damage everything on your opponent's board and then all the non-demons on your board, and then the Lord of Ruins would give all those buffs to the Shimmermoth, and all those separate buffs were a proc for the Shimmermoth, which is why the Beetles got so big. So yeah, you can still play this in Lord of Ruins and have the AoE buff it, but that is far, far, far weaker than what it was before. And same thing with Overflow. Overflow now just has no effect on this because you don't deal damage when you're overflowing. So overall, good change. But I'm curious to see if you still just get these stupid big Beetles with the Rylak build or not. Jazzer loses the damage. I don't know why. I don't play Quills. But I do get a ton of viewers and comments on YouTube, people saying Quills are OP. I leave every Quill lobby. This is not fun to play. And this is, you wouldn't believe how common this is, where there's just metas where people are just saying Quills are a problem. It's just like nobody plays it. So I think there is this huge difference between like the very, very, very top end lobbies and essentially everything else, because I think at a very top end, you just have this crazy BS that people pull off, right? You have these insanely large photobomber builds. You have acid rains that have, 10,000 stats. You got crazy undead setups. So a lot of the time, the Quillboard just aren't good enough. But I can see that, with Jazzer being on 2, it is a bit easier to just hard commit into Quills. And then even if 3 people do that and 2 of them die early because you don't really want to hard commit early on, you still lose to the guy that high rolls Quills. So that gives the perception of, oh, Quills are a problem here because they're winning every lobby I'm in. But you don't see the 2 guys that forced it and died early because they started buffing their gems and then didn't get anything to use the big gems on. So that's always been the problem with Quills for me. You kind of need to buff your gems early. You need to buy your Piper, you need to get your Jazzer and your Rylak and stuff. And then you just need to hope you find something to use those gems. And that's not a very good way to play the game because, like I said, quite often you don't find the thing and then you die. So yeah, that's probably a big reason. Then Skitterer was changed quite a bit. So I think there was a change before this. So for those of you who don't know, I was gone for a week, so I was a little bit disconnected from the meta. But I think there was a change like right before I went, where Skitterer was changed from tier 4 to tier 5, and then Progenitor went from tier 5 to tier 4. So I have actually not played with this yet, but it was changed from 5/5 to 4/4, so I can see that being a tad too good. Because now you can just have a Skitterer, let's say you golden it, that's +8/+8. Then you have a Macaw, that's 16/16. Golden Macaw, right? Then you have Titus, 32/32. It can be reborn, try to get a bunch of other buffs. So that is like a pretty good mid-game solution for Beetles, where you can actually have the Titus Macaw Skitterer build, and you skip the whole step with Rylak, because you used to have to play Forest Rover next to Rylak. Now you can just have Skitterer with Macaw with Titus, so that saves you a whole board space. And it scales more because the buff is better than the Forest Rover buff. So that opens that option. Now, I do think you still want to go Rylak just because you can play the tier 3 beast and trigger Shimmermoth. So, but this could be a little bit of a mid-game solution for that. Speaking of Forest Rover, it's a 1/1. Yeah, this thing is kind of broken on tier 2. Not in the general sense of, oh my god, he hit Forest Rovers, he now wins the game. But you kind of just win your next few fights. Like if you have a Forest Rover pair, my god, that's 2 3/2s on your board that have Death Rattle, summon a 4/4. That is very good. That's very strong for a 2-drop. So yeah, I do agree. Just change it to the absolute minimum stats here. Well, I guess it could be a 0/1. That's a bit weird. So yeah, a 1/1 that summons a 3/3 is fair, right? It's like not super strong, but then you open up the pair and now you're summoning 4/4s again, right? So that's the whole problem. It's usually when you have a Beetle start where you have the 1/1 that summons a 2/2 and then you hit a Forest Rover pair, like my god, you're just not losing for a while. So yeah, I think that's a fair nerf to lower the stats. Skyblazer goes to 3/1. Yeah, not many people play this. Now, in the absence of Shimmermoth, or the temporary absence that's back now, people were still playing that Rylak self-damage build and then just run Skyblazer and the Lasher. But again, the Shimmermoth is just so much better at doing that. So I think now that Shimmermoth is back, we're just going to see that build being good. And then Skyblazer, maybe for APM Beast kind of thing, where you got your Panther, you got your Nuzao, you got your Skyblazer, and then you have Rylak with the Tiger Shark, right? That's an option. So I could see it there. Eternal Night is a 4/1, right? Again, I feel like this every single time they do this. It's that scene from Mean Girls, like, stop trying to make Eternal Night happen. It's not gonna happen. Because it's like, it's plus 2-1, now it's plus 3-1, make it a 4-1. Oh. It might. All right, I mean, that makes sense. They're also buffing this, but yeah, I mean, at some point it's playable. Now, I will say, with the Eternal Tycoon, it's a lot of fun. It's not that good yet, although I do want to cook something with Onyxia and Eternal Tycoon, because then you get more hits for your revenge, and then you get more procs from your hero power. So the dream is like you have, I guess, Golden Tycoon, Regular Tycoon, Regular Tycoon. I actually had that before, and it was pretty decent. It still just runs out of things. It's not quite infinite. So, but yeah, there's just this whole thing where if you have 3 Tycoons in the back, you only need Avenge 2. So again, then with Onyxia, you only need Avenge 1. So for every one thing that dies, you summon 4. And you like essentially feed the loop. So that is pretty cool. It's also the reason why the golden one can't really be summon 2 knights, because then you would just have 2 golden ones and a regular one. It's like, aha, I summon 5 knights, and those 5 knights summon 5 more knights, and those 5 knights summon 5 more knights. Now you could stop that. You're just like, aha, here's an Anoyatron. You're like, that ruins my whole combo. Or it just hits into a Bran and it stops because the board is full. But still, I mean, that could, something that deals infinite damage is generally not something they want to have in the game, or at least make it like really, really hard, and then still kind of counterable, like I said, with a small taunt. So yeah, TLDR is I will probably try this again if I have the absolute nuts for it. So let's say I'm playing Lich King, I buy an Eternal Night early, because that's kind of good on Lich King. I triple into a Tycoon, I'm like, okay, sure, let's see, let's have some fun. But other than that, I don't think this is a build you're gonna like force or try to move into. Burglar. I have not seen or played a lot of hand buff Murloc. Again, it just feels like Stun Drake is still just pretty good, and high attack undead are still just pretty good. And if you try to play hand buff Murloc, which relies on stats, you kind of just get farmed by those 2 comps. So undead have to be out, and then dragons have to be out. So I do feel like dragons and undead still have like a pretty big hold on the meta, and they make it difficult to play stat builds, just because if you rely on stats and you're running into 500 damage undeads, or thousands of damage on your tokens with Stun Drake, it's pretty hard to be like, oh, my Bream is 900. It's just like nobody cares, right? So yeah, in specific lobbies, sure, but Dragon and Dead lobbies, tough to do stat related stuff. Red Volumizer is now 3 attack, so yeah, that's part of the move of trying to make the Volumizers playable with the Metal Dispenser. Volumizer back to 3 attack, back to 3 health, and then the green one is now base stat 3/3 instead of 2/2, so not like a huge buff. These are pretty significant buffs, right? Because you're scaling 1 attack and 1 health more. With this one, it's the same amount of scaling, but at least you're getting 1/1 extra every time you magnetize the base body. Deflector is going from Avenge 4 to Avenge 3. I've put this on my board a few times. I was never impressed. Maybe now with the Metal Dispenser getting buffed, you're going to see 1 or 2 deflectors in the back, and you just throw all your Volumizers onto that. Maybe that's a comp. Again, not really sure, because then you have to do a really big Avenge setup, which means you probably have to play Broodmother to trigger. You can, like Menace isn't really in, right? That would have been a good card here. The Magnetize and summon 3 1/1s. That would be good to feed this. But if you just have a bunch of high damage shield units, which you often have if you play Arena or if you're just magnetizing, it's tricky to really make this proc a few times, which is ultimately the goal. So it's a bit of a weird card for me right now. Maybe we find a place for it in the current patch. Matriarch goes to 3 health, which is quite significant. This is not a terrible card. This is a card that is just very high tempo. If you triple into this early and you have a bunch of coins from various cards that are generating coins right now, even anomalies, right, that generate coins. Yeah, you get a lot of stats on your board and you're not losing your next fight or two quite often. But this doesn't really fit into endgame builds, and I think that's what this change is about, where they're trying to say, hey, what if we just have Matriarch and then we just have, you know, a bunch of Nagas on the board and we're casting as spells, but really need that Wrath scale for, I think that's what it's called. It's that tier 6 Naga that says whenever a Naga gains health, it also gains the damage. Because that's really when this was viable as a pure Naga build. It's when you just pump a ton of health and then you also get a bunch of damage because of Rat Scale. But with the current identity, the tier 5 Spellcraft guy, man, I'm good with my names right now. Meditative, yes, I do play this game for a living. Meditative used to be, oh, I just get like 1 or 2 meditatives early. I get a bunch of spell power for plus HP, and then I get Rat Scale Rogue later on, and then all my health that I gain from my spells with, say, a Fauna will turn into damage with the Rat Scale, so I'm fine. Now that they've changed the identity, I feel like they don't really have much of an identity right now, so they're in this weird spot where it's kind of just deep blue from what I've seen and felt when I was playing. So I don't know, I don't think this changes enough to now suddenly just, hey, let me just like play a bunch of spells and have Matriarch on the board. Asharan Veteran is slightly nerfed. It's going from 2-1 and then repeat for bonus keywords to 2-1 for each bonus keyword, which is awkward because it means that you can play this and do absolutely nothing. Give your minions plus 2-1 for each different bonus keyword in your warband. If you don't have Taunt, if you don't have Shield, if you don't have Wind Fury, blah, 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 this does nothing, which I think is wrong. Now, I don't have a better solution for this. So this quite often I was like, this is wrong. What would you do? I don't know, right? Because it is too strong in terms of pure tempo, according to the devs, I would assume, right? That's what the change is for. So usually when you see a nerf like this, they just have data. We're like, oh, if people triple into a veteran, it's like too much tempo, they win too many fights. It's kind of frustrating for the opponents. And I have seen that sometimes where my opponent has 2 of these and just like, holy, okay, I guess I just take 15. And that's not a very fun feeling. But yeah, tripling into this and be like, cool, this does literally nothing is also not really a great feeling. So not sure what the right solution is for this. Mana Surge is 2-2 instead of 1-1. That is very significant. Now, this thing was not really playable, so good change. If you were playing Elementals, it was like, oh, I can Mana Surge and give like some buffs to my board, or I can just play Acid Rain and have thousands of stats. And that's sort of been the problem with Acid Rain. It's like, I could know me, but why would I know me if I just want to buff the right side? Like, I could Mana Surge, but why would I Mana Surge if I can just play Acid Rain? So Acid Rain is still just quite a bit better than the alternatives. Now, with Mana Surge going to 2-2, you do have the other change here to Shore Marauder. Shore Marauder is now a bigger body, so it's a little easier to get early and maybe not lose the fight. So a Shore Marauder plus a Mana Surge is now +3/+3 to all your elementals. But yeah, that's the issue, right? If you're playing this type of build, you're almost always going to want to condense stats, because that is the bread and butter of high level gameplay. If I could have 1 big guy, 2 Leroys, and like 2 Venom cards, that is going to beat 5 generically big elementals every day of the week, because my really big guy can kill 2 or 3 of your cards, and then my scam can trade 1 for 1. So if we have a comp that deliberately spreads out the stats equally, you are innately at a disadvantage. Again, it's a little bit higher level, right? And not everyone wants to play like that. It's like, I don't want to buy Leroy's and stuff. I just want to like play my stuff. Totally fine. I get it, right? But this is an analysis of, okay, how balanced is this? How good is this in terms of trying to win games? And I think you always have that innate advantage of like, oh, this is a strategy that makes a big guy. That's almost always better than let's just buff out the stats equally. Now, of course, you can't really buff the AoE thing too much, because now you AoE buff and they're all big guys, and you know, that's too strong. So it's a tricky thing to balance. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I will try this if I get Trumpeteer. It's a new, well, not a new, it's an old card that is now Time Warp, which is the whole spiel of Time Warp. It's whenever you sell on like 4 elementals, I think you get an elemental in your hand. So if you're Vood and you can copy a Trumpeteer, or if you're Merzon, then you get like 2 Trumpeteers. Now you only need to sell 2 elementals, and then you get basically the 2, right? And then you sell those, and you need to sell 2 more, and then you get 2 more, etc. So especially if you have a brand and you can do stuff like Refreshing or Tavern Tempest, then you're kind of cooking, because now you're at a spot where, oh, now I get super rewarded for playing all these elementals, and my board is getting very big because I just have so many resources with the Trumpeteer. Outside of that, I don't really see it right now. Then we've already touched on this briefly. Shore Marauder now has more base stats, which is, you know, not the biggest buff, but it does help a little bit. Cannon Corsair is going from 1-2 to 1-1, but it is on tier 5, so it's going to be much easier to make it golden, much easier to have a few of these instead of just one. And I will say that I recently got absolutely destroyed by someone who had golden Shore Marauder, golden Cannon Corsair, and just infinite gold with Bran and Tethys. Because now every single card you sell, it gives, what is this? The golden one is twice, right? So with a golden Shore Marauder, it would be 3/3 twice. So 6/6 to all your pirates if you sell any minion. And obviously if you have golden Tethys, golden Bran, you're selling a lot of minions. So if you can even add 1 or 2 cleaves to your board there to help with the combat, because your engine is relatively small. It's just Tethys for money and then Bran, and then you have Shore Marauder Corsair. So that gives you like 2 board slots to do whatever you want, which is, you know, quite fun. You can add the cleaves or Divine Shield, although it's kind of hard to get a Shield of Pirate. Gotta do some weird stuff with prizes or anomalies. Radio Star was not changed, but just the wording. So the change is that it now says get a copy of the minion that killed this instead of get a copy of the enemy minion that killed this. So you could use Tunnel Blaster to kill this off and get more Tunnel Blasters. It's a bit of a meme, but it's a good way to triple because you know which one minion is killing the Radio Star. So now the text reflects that. Alley Cat is a 7/7 instead of a 5/5. Yeah, outside of the mutinous meme where you eat on top of the cat every time and you essentially double the stats. Anytime you can go double, that's good. That's not something we need to try, like exponential scaling. Very good in this game. But outside of that, it is a bit awkward. So, because it requires a lot of board space, it's not that much tempo. It being a 7/7 makes it a little bit better early on, and sometimes you just take it because it is +1 gold on the cat. But yeah, not like super excited to play this. Time Warp Seer going from 1 to 2 Tavern spells, I think might make this playable now. It was a bit of an awkward thing when it was just 1 Tavern spell. So yeah, 2, I would probably pick this for sure to mess around with it, see how it feels. Because the issue with guaranteed economy versus this is I always like to compare this to, this is a coupon, right? It's not money. If you put coins in my hand, I can spend that on whatever I want. If I want to level, I can do that. If I want to roll, I can do that. If I want to buy a minion, I can do that. Reducing the spell, that's a coupon. That's like, well, I don't know. What if the spell is not something I actually want to buy, huh? Then my coupon sucks. And then I need to spend money to roll, and that's how to get your chat to give you the coupon, and then you're in the store, and then you're buying all kinds of stuff you didn't really want, and that's why it works. So same thing here, where I'm like, oh well, I need to buy the free spell. I guess I need to roll. It's like, oh, this sucks, and before you know it, you rolled 4 times, and your free spell just cost you 4 gold. So with 2, the upside is bigger, where you could probably just buy whatever you have in the shop, and then just like roll once or twice and take a better spell. So yeah. Short rant on why coupons isn't as good as just money. Time Warp Guard is now a 5/10 instead of a 3/7. Sure, this card is okay. I have definitely had it in some very cool setups with Zarina. That's where this really starts to shine. If you take this early and get Zarina, anything you have is Divine Shield. So Divine Shield Pirate Cleave, Divine Shield Nuzao in particular, because you can Wind Fury that, and oh, it's Divine Shield and has hundreds of damage, and bam! That's very fun mid game. But quite often during the Time Warp, you want to get some money. You want to get that Undead, that Reborns that gives you more coins, which are not coupons. Or you can get even like the Elemental end of turn, and you can use that money to then get into a real comp, because that's really the issue with these heavy tempo cards, is they reduce the chance that you end up with something like a Bran and infinite gold and just do whatever you want, right? Which is then used to make a stun trait board or a very high attack and dead board. Whereas the guard can work out, but you have to be a bit luckier because you have fewer resources to hit what you want. Mothership is Avenge 4 instead of 5. That's better, right? That's the high level insights you come to my channel for. Avenge 4 better than Avenge 5. However, if it's better at doing something we don't really care too much about, is it that relevant? Now, it can farm Immortal. That is true. I would say that is the line here. So there is a point at which Mothership becomes really good because you can just farm so many that the chance to hit Immortal is quite high. And as long as you can chain Immortals together, you go double stats, double stats, double stats, because the golden one doubles the stats. And obviously, if you have a big minion in the front, that makes it even better, because then you start with a huge amount of stats and then you double, double, double. So there is a point at which the Avenge number is low enough that you say, okay, now I can reliably farm Immortals. Is Avenge 4 that number? I'm not sure yet. Again, there's a lot of really powerful stuff in the Time Warp Anomaly meta. So just playing some carriers or playing some Void Rays or whatever, Colossus, the other one, I don't care. Right? I don't really care. I care about Immortals, essentially. If I'm playing this, I just want as many Immortals as possible. Sure, I can have a Void Ray in the beginning to not take too much damage, but the end goal with this is always stack as many Immortals as you can, because that is just, you know, exponential, which is a very good thing to do in this game. So I'll try it out for sure, right? Tipper goes from a 3-4 to a 6-8. That's fun, right? Sometimes I want to play Tipper. I also really like that it's 1 chronum instead of 2. Tipper at 2 is suicide. It's like, here, spend your entire Time Warp turn to put a 3-4 on your board, and you have to float a gold. Good luck winning your next few fights. It's like, well, I don't think I will. So they changed it from 2 to 1 chronum, and now it even has some stats, because that's what it's all about. Right, if you can win fights while you have this on your board, that's pretty good, right? But you're down a gold in the beginning. You have to put a crappy body on your board, which is tough to win fights with. So these two things are nice changes where, right, it changed from 2 to 1 chronum, and now it also is a 6-8. That does make it more pickable when you say, oh, I really want, say, this Terran hero power. Got 1 chronum left. Cool, let's take the Tipper, float a gold this turn. Can make a little bit of money on the side. Maybe not even lose the fight because I can use the Terran hero power on a death rattle. The Tipper might trade into something now. So good, fun change. Time Warp Traveler going from Avenge 5 to 4, and it's a 4-8 instead of a 4-5. I didn't like this minion whenever I've played with it, which I think is twice now. Gave it another shot because it sounds fun. It's like you never know what you're gonna get, but quite often getting the tier 1, or rather minor Time Warp, which are tier 3 minions, getting those later in the game, it doesn't really matter that much. It's like, oh well, now I get the Elemental and I can put that on my board, and I have to wait another turn, and then I have 1 Elemental, but then I can't really keep it around to triple because I got it too late. I didn't get it on turn 6, I got it on turn 7 or turn 8. So the whole design of the card feels a little off, where the minor Time Warp minions are supposed to hit on the minor Time Warp, and when you're farming them later in the game, the minor Time Warp's over. Right? So again, sometimes I think I just take this because it could give me some money and maybe an interesting card, and it's a 4-8. It's Avenge 4 now instead of 5, but overall it doesn't feel like I can really do something with this. We have Time Warp Chimera going from 1-1 to 2-1, which is significantly better. This is again one of those cards where I'm not really going to go out of my way too much to buy it, but if I have another 1-cost chronum that I want, then I can just add this and add a little tempo to the board. This was 2 chronums when it was released, and that definitely felt too expensive. I bought it once or twice and I just wasn't too happy about it. But that's the same problem again, where you could take some tempo or you can take money, and usually if you're in a spot where you can afford to take money, the money is better because it's going to help you make a bigger build later on. Now again, it being 1 cost and then a buff does make it more likely that you can pick it up alongside another good 1-cost chronum investment. Then we got some major Time Warp stuff. Mithrax is now an amalgam, but can't trigger off other Mithrexes, which that does make sense. It's generally not a good idea, because then you could just have your board full of Mithrexes or something. That's yeah, anyways. Yeah, this is a fun change, I think. This being all means that if you are playing with Nala, it scales. If you're playing Evoker, it scales, that kind of stuff. So yeah, fun little change. I don't mind it. Astrogil is 2-1 instead of 1-1. Sure. This is fine. I think I've taken this once and just was totally not impressed with it. The issue again is these stat-based builds are just tough to play in Dragon and Undead lobbies just because of how strong Dundrake and how strong the attack on the Undeads are. So yeah, don't think this suddenly makes me want to buy a bunch of Astro, or take Astro Gillen and Major Time Warp. Time Warp Goldren is 3/3. Yeah, the issue is it's so late to start doing this, right? You have to be owning on the board already. You got to be high health, you already got to have Titus, and you have to have like, essentially you need to already have a Goldren setup, and you say, you know what, I could actually use my Macaw to trigger this Goldren now, and then I could have my other Goldren just like Taunted and Reborn, and I could use that one for tempo while I use this Goldren for some permanent stats. And that's just not a situation you find yourself in very often, because if you do not really have a setup to play Goldren, which essentially means Titus and preferably Macaw as well, when can you buy this and say, oh, I'm gonna like start buffing now? That's a tough one, right? So the game is just generally high pace. It's a huge turn, everybody gets very strong. So if you don't already have a big lead, putting this and getting the +3/+3 on your board, if it's not accompanied by amazing setup, is generally just going to get you killed. And then we have a change that I don't understand. I mean, I guess I know where it's coming from, but we have Time Warp Jungle King going from 3/2 to 4/3. Now, let me give you a little bit of backstory on this one. This looked to be an unplayable pile of garbage. Because it didn't really make sense. It's like, beasts don't have economy, I can't really like, well, when am I gonna do this? It's so awkward. And then Jeef, being Jeef, was like, what if I just like play a Bran and play a Shipment and pump a ton of spells and then have like a mount on the board for some tempo, and then I just start playing Cleave Man. Damn, I play this card all the time. News out. My names are awful today. So, and then you just play Nuzao, and then the Nuzao is like plus 200, and then I play another one, and then I triple, and then I got like 1,000 damage Nuzao, and it's got Reborn, and then when it comes back, it's got like 200 damage again, and yeah, that is good. Long story short, so this minion was just not played almost ever, and then Jeef tried it out when he was preparing for the World Championships, was very impressed with it, where he already liked it from earlier practice, and then he got a really good game with it. It's like, oh my god, this card is so good. And then we saw him bust it out during the World Championships and won the game with it, I think, or got like a very, very high placement in like the most competitive lobbies on earth. So yeah, to see that, and Jeeves just being like, oh, this is like free top 2 or something, and then I see that being buffed, that gives me like, I can see why, because the average player is obviously not Jeef, and they don't know how to set this up. But if you know how to set it up, this card is actually very good. It probably also wasn't very popular because, again, I played this game for a living, and I thought it was trash. So you can see your average player just be like, oh, I don't know how to do this. But, after watching Jeef do it, I'm like, that's very good. And then I tried it myself and said, that's very good. So not sure. I don't think this is like a huge meta problem because it's a Time Warp card and it's kind of rare, because how often do you have beasts on your board to open up this Time Warp? So yeah, again, I don't think it's a huge problem, but it's a change that I don't necessarily agree with. We'll put it like that. Substrate now has a Divine Shield, which is a major buff to baller boards on tier 2, because now you're buffing a shield. So pretty good. Now, outside of ballers on 2, this is generally too slow to take for pretty much any other build. So I guess that's where the buff is coming in from, where, if I'm just playing a regular comp and I don't have stats on my ballers yet, I'm like, oh, well, let me start buffing ballers essentially on turn 10, because you get this on turn 9, and then the card goes into your hand at the end of turn 9, and then on turn 10 you open your first baller spell. Generally not fast enough, right? It's the same problem of the Goldren stuff. If you have to start doing that on turn 9, you're probably going to die. So again, I don't know if this card suddenly becomes that good, but you could play it with maybe Mana Surge and Trumpeteer, and now you're getting like 2 elementals guaranteed at the start of the turn. That's quite good, but other than that, I'm not sure about it. Oh man, this change is long overdue. Every time I see Time Warp base skill for 2 Chronum, I sit there and I say, yeah, that's not something I can spend 2 Chronums on. Because it's such a long-term thing where you know, even summoning a Divine Shield minion earlier on is not that big a deal, right? There's bumpers, like stuff is not that big yet. There's no Venom, it's not that big a deal. So you don't even get that much stronger if you already have a big minion in your hand, right? And that's a big if, because you need to basically be playing Scout and Aviator. And then maybe you can make a base skill kind of work on your board. But for 2 Chronums, like, come on. That's not worth it. So with 1 Chronum now, maybe sometimes if I already have a Scout and I have something like an Elise Hero Power or whatever that I want to buy, sure, I can add this. Fine. But at 2 Chronums, this was pretty much never justifiable. Now we have some changes to Professor Putricide. Now I'm not going to go too in depth on these because the gist of it is essentially we took out bad creations or bad parts of creations and we added some, you know, or we changed some decent ones and lowered the tier. So you can now get +1/+1 on tier 1, you can get 2 health on tier 3, you can get the arms dealer, which is, you know, I don't really care for it on tier 1, but at least it's tier 1. Which just means that you're more likely to get better creations when you press the button, which makes sense because Putricide is not a meta hero right now, despite Undead being kind of decent. But by removing a lot of these creations, you increase the chance that you find the coin guy and the reborn guy. Now, that sounds very like what? But there are 2 specific minions that give a coin. I think it's the Gargoyle and the Tomb Pillager. If you have that as your first pick and then your second pick of the creation has Reborn on it, now you have a very, very good minion. So a popular strategy on Putricide is to go to tier 3 on turn 3 because that's where your first coin minion resides. The Gargoyle is on 3, the Tomb Pillager is on 4. And then you do something like buy a Chef's Choice or you buy like a Scout, sell it, and now you have 4 gold on the 6 gold turn. And then you hero power and you try to hit the coin guy with Reborn, and now you get +2 gold every turn starting from turn 4. That's very strong. So, you know, maybe with these 5 leaving the pool, you now get that enough of the time to justify picking Putricide, which could be very cool. Then Artanis also has some changes here. Mothership goes from bench 5 to 4. We have already covered that. And Carrier goes from a 5/5 to a 7/7. So I guess the jump is per 7 now, which is better. And if you get Carrier early from your Mothership, you can definitely put it on the board for a while, but it will fall off almost no matter what you do. Because this just can't keep up with hundreds of damage on your undead or, you know, huge acid rain builds or whatever other people are cooking up. So you can't really be carrier comp, but you can be carriers in the mid game and then try to farm immortals, right? And then the carriers can help the Mothership get more revenge procs because you're summoning more stuff. So, but yeah, other than that, not that big a deal. And then lastly, we have some anomaly changes as well. The False Idol one now gives you a tavern coin instead of a gold coin, which was just a bit of an oversight. The devs have steadily moved towards removing all the coins from the game and replace it with tavern coins because it now triggers stuff like Plankwalker and Nala, which is fine. I think that is, you know, it's just fun. That increases the fun in the game. Now you have more like synergy and fun stuff to do, so I'm all for that. So good stuff here. 11th Tower has been removed. I can see why. I didn't mind this anomaly because it really incentivizes you to go for high roll builds, but it prolongs the games and it does make the game a little bit more predictable because you know that people are going to be greedier. They are going to aim for those very high scaling builds. So I can see why this has been removed. And then the last change is Dark Moon, or the last changes are Dark Moon Fair related, sorry. This one is now less common, which again, for me, it's kind of a neutral change. I didn't mind playing this. I didn't see it all the time, but I did just have that week break. So that might be skewing my perception a little bit. And then Reserve Prizes is now spells cost 1 less this turn instead of 2. There were definitely some busted things you could do with this. If you have Lubber, you have Nala, or if you're Caliwigs or something, spells cost 2 less means a lot of the spells are just free or gold neutral or plus gold, right? And that is, yeah, you could have some really busted turns with this. So yeah, spells cost 1 less does seem more in line with that. All right, guys, that was it. Another patch review. As always, if you guys have any comments, stuff I missed, or just generally fun things that you want to try that I didn't mention, please do leave a comment. I read every single one of them on these types of videos. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys next time.